In our last video, we looked at the Michigan National Bank. In this video, let's just walk across the street to the other side of Military and look at what's here where this wonderful approach to Black River is with the trees and a nice sidewalk going down there. At one time, I think probably this was originally trees, perhaps not as well manicured as this, but probably just trees, and then Fort Huron started building up, and buildings became known there, and you could see the wooden buildings going along Water Street, the backs of them anyway. And as we zoom out, you can see the Military Street Bridge, and you can see the dirt road that is Military going straight up to the left-hand corner. But this location changed over the years, and there was no one more important for implementing that change than the Meisel family. The Meisel family immigrated from Germany. The family first settled in Bay City, but moved to Fort Huron in 1854. Mr. Meisel was a tailor in Germany. He and his wife Augusta had 5 children. There's these 3 girls. Of course, they're not girls in this picture here. The 2 gals on the outside, Catherine and Barbara, were in their teens when they left Germany. And the one in the middle, Margaret, was actually born on the ship on the way over. The Meisels that had the most impact on downtown Fort Huron were the Meisel brothers, Christian G. Meisel and Gottlieb C. Meisel. The older brother I'll refer to as Christian, and the younger brother I'll refer to younger brother, just so I don't butcher the German language. Young Christian Meisel turned out to be a real go-getter. While in Bay City, when only 11 years old and attending school, he was working in a general store and post office. Young Meisel so rapidly acquired the English language as in the next year, when only 11, he was entrusted with the charge of the post office and to attend the store where the office was kept. After their move to Fort Huron, he worked at another general store and liked it so much that he determined to make it his life's work. He took a course in mercantile bookkeeping in Detroit, and upon graduation began keeping books for a variety of businesses in Fort Huron. At age 21, he started a dry goods business on Water Street, employing his younger brother as a clerk. This business lasted only a short time, as Christie, as he became known, determined that it would be advantageous to become a partner with James A. Davison and James B. Farron in a larger store on Military Street. This would have been across from the Harrington Hotel. During the time that Christian was working at this store, a number of significant life-changing events occurred. First, his father died in 1864. Then he met his wife, Cordelia, and they married and had a child in 1868. His younger sister married also in 1868. And finally, his mother, Augusta, passed away in 1869. The Davidson, Meisel, and Farron partnership dissolved in 1871, and Christian partnered with his younger brother to start another dry goods store on the south side of Water Street, between Military and the Customs Alley, under the name of C.G. Meisel and Brother. Of course, the Custom Alley would have been right about here, just the other side of the telephone pole between the Custom House and these buildings. The business would have been located in one of these buildings right here. We just don't know which one. In 1873, the younger brother, having been firmly established in a thriving business, married Anna McMorrin. And that name sounds familiar because she was a sister to Henry McMorrin. By 1879, the Meisel dry goods business was booming, and the brothers outgrew their little store. They moved the business across Water Street and west to a much larger building on Water, just opposite the Customs House. Grand opening occurred on April 5, 1879. Fort Huron Times carried a full 2-column story describing the facility, its decor, and the merchandise, and it named several of the employees and their positions. It was about this time that the older brother, Christian, moved his family over to the northwest corner of Beard and Military, into a large home with a wonderful view of the river. Of course, this is what it looks like today. Keep in mind, when he looked out at the river, he wouldn't have seen this view. He would have seen this view here. Military was a little different back then. Again, by 1884, business had grown such that brothers were forced to relocate again. This time they moved east to the corner of Water and Military Street to a new 3-story building designed to the Meisel specification. And this is the location that we are concentrating on in this video. It took me a while to get here, but you knew I'd get here eventually. So let's take a look at this building. As we zoom into the front entrance here, you can see there's a column on each side of the steps. You can't see the one on the right too well, but they're pretty nice looking columns. And then on the side, you've got like bay windows, rather than the flat windows going all the way across. There's also decorative moldings. You can't see them too well, but they're on the top and also in between the floors. And then of course above the doorway there you've got the Meisel signage. It made quite an addition to the retail establishments in downtown Port Huron, and also competition as well. It became the premier dry goods store in Port Huron. In this promotional booklet of Port Huron from 1900, they did some rare views into the inside of the store as well. You can see the stools here for the ladies to sit down to be waited on. This is a men's department, and we even had stools for the men to sit on. So what did this booklet have to say about Meisel's? Well, it said this: Meisel's Corner is a place of which Port Huron is justly proud. It is a dry goods mecca of the city and controls the trade as well as the styles. 25 years ago, this corner was graced with an old wooden structure. Today is seen one of the prettiest business houses in the city, and by this time next year, 2 new stories will be added, which will tower high above its sister buildings and still add to the metropolitan appearance with which it is now surrounded. On the first floor will be found ribbons, silks, dress goods, dress trimmings, lace, linen, children's goods, umbrellas, and numerous little ideas that tend to make a lady's shopping trip pleasant. The basement contains the curtain, cushion, upholstering, rug, and blanket departments, each of which has much attention as if they were stores in themselves. The second floor, the finest showroom in the state, always looks immense in its attire. The cloak department has a fine line of new things. Capes have a prominent place. The suit, separate skirt, wrapper, and underwear department are well supplied. In fact, the appearance of each and every department tends to sustain the enviable reputation that Mr. Meisel has gained for his store. The dry goods business continued to thrive into the 1890s. However, that decade was not so kind personally to either Christian or his younger brother. In 1893, Christian's wife Cora was traveling in Germany with her daughter Clara and son-in-law Harvey Bush, when she was burnt to death on August 17th in Stuttgart. After her death, Christian decided to leave the business and loaned his brother the money to buy him out. Then on February 27, 1896, a fire started in the basement of the store at about 2 a.m. The building and all the contents were completely destroyed. The younger brother was in Kentucky on a buying trip at the time. About a week later, however, he announced that the business would be re-established temporarily in the building across the street, but that the old firm name will be dropped and the new store will be named G.C. Meisel, which is his name. In this photo, we see the Meisel employees standing out in front of the store. I believe this is the first store that they built on the corner, and I believe that this is the one that burnt down. And notice the building here. It's a little different than we've been seeing. The angles are much sharper. There's no rounded front. and there's also no steps going up into it, and the two columns, one on each side of the steps, of course, are missing. While they were waiting for their new store to be built, I believe this is the store that they set up their temporary business in. Probably the only store on the other side of the street that would have been big enough to accommodate their business. There's another photo of the Meisel employees. In the upper corners you can see the brothers that owned the Meisels, and the older one on the left-hand side, Christian, and on the right-hand side you see the younger brother, Gottlieb. And it looks like they had some pretty young employees working for them. These two boys here don't look too old at all. The business moved back to the site where we looked at originally, on the northwest corner of Military and Water Street, when the new 3-story building was completed. There were awnings all the way around the building on the first floor. This is basically the same shot of the photograph we just looked at, and it was made into a postcard. The Meisel dry goods business continued to flourish, and they added extra floors. Although the earlier reports said they were going to add 2 more floors to make 5 stories, and that's what this picture shows here, the plans for it. They actually made 3 more stories, which made it a 6-story building. It became the skyscraper of Port Huron. The man that had the vision for this building was Harvey Bush. Harvey was the son-in-law of Christian Meisel. This building became known as the Bush Block, and eventually the whole block became known as the Bush Block. This is what it says about Harvey S. Bush. He was born in Michigan in 1864. He has spent 12 years in the best colleges in the world and graduated at the University of Michigan, A.B. in 1888, Yale Theological Seminary, B.D., Doctor of Philosophy, Ph.D. in Germany. He is building the Bush Block, which, when completed, will be one of the finest buildings of the kind in the state. And as you can see here, he was so proud of this building that he put his name on it. At some point, they even got into the mail order business, shopping by mail. And at the bottom it says, the busiest corner in the city. And it was. This postcard here gives you a good view of the Meisel retail establishment, and also the merchant exchange block across the street. This postcard here gives you a good view looking down Water Street, looking west off of Military. You can see the streetcar there and the folks standing along the sidewalk. But it gives you a real good view of the entrance to Meisel's. You can see the column there, and you can see the steps. In this postcard you can see the unique curved front of the building. And you can kind of look in the windows and you can see that there was dentist's office, there was doctor's office, but there was another establishment there too, and that was W.B. Robeson. Robeson was an agent for Preservo, the greatest water and weatherproofing on earth. And in this advertisement here you can see some testimonials from Barnum and Bailey telling them what a great improvement it was over their former preservative, and also ordering 4,300 gallons from Robeson. Robeson was the inventor and manufacturer of Preservo, and he had 2 locations, one here in Port Huron and one in New York. It was a pretty impressive building, and for no other reason than its height. And it was especially impressive if you were coming down Military going north. And it was certainly a focal point at the end of Military, just like the Michigan National was when you're coming from Huron Avenue. This postcard here gives you a pretty good profile looking actually southwest at the building. Also, notice in this postcard here that it refers to this building as the Bush Building, saying Jackknife Bridge and Bush Building in Port Huron, Michigan. What happened next to Meisel's is a little sketchy. The family history says nothing about bankruptcy, but I found this article in a trade magazine. Meisel, Hogan, and Eichhorn in Port Huron, Michigan. As previously noted, they have taken over the dry goods business of the G.C. Meisel Company, which recently went into bankruptcy. They have already opened the store, stocking it with new goods purchased in Detroit. Oscar W. Hogan and Jacob Eichhorn, the new members of the firm, are well known through their former connection with the old G.C. Meisel store. Hogan has been with it 15 years and Eichhorn 35 years. Goes on to say Meisel, Hogan, and Eichhorn, Port Huron, Michigan, who succeeded the defunct G.C. Meisel Dry Goods Company, have incorporated with a capital of $30,000. Here you see an advertisement for the new firm. In 1912, Meisel retired, and you can see by this trade journal that it refers to only Eichhorn and Hogan. Meisel is missing. You can also see that it only had 3 men employed and 5 women employees for a total of 8. I think it was a much smaller enterprise than the original Meisel store. Retirement didn't agree with Meisel, so after a short time he purchased the Appenzeller store at 222 Huron Avenue, which is what the picture shows here, which it looks like in 2009, I think, when Google took this picture. Although in poor health for his last 2 years, Meisel was active in the business up until 10 days before passing away in 1918. Ironically, the G.C. Meisel store in Huron Avenue burned to the ground about 1 month later. At some point, there was another business that was brought in, and that was the Bon Marché store. This was a millinery store, and it was previously located on Huron Avenue on the 200 block, as pictured here in this postcard. This trade ad here tells about the move to a larger location. Here's an advertisement for them, but the advertisement says that at this time they were still on Huron Avenue. Eventually, this building was taken over by People's Bank, and that's the way I remember it when I was growing up. People's Bank was on one side and Michigan National was on the other. In this photograph here, you can see some differences between this building and the previous building. Although they're both the same building, they made some changes. The entrance is pretty much the same. There's still the columns on each side of the steps, but if you notice, the first 2 floors now have a cement exterior, and the bay windows are gone. Now there's just windows there without protruding from the building. Also note the decorative top that was on the Meisel building, and you'll see in a moment that it was no longer like that on the People's Bank building. Also, the back entrance on the Meisel building was more of a grand entrance. It had a nice arch and quite a good-looking entrance. Now let's look at the People's Bank building. And now you see a strip of something that goes around the top of the building. I'm not sure what it is. Some type of metal or cement, I assume. And it may have been just to keep the old structure from deteriorating and falling on people below. You can also see that rear grand entrance is no longer there. It's just a common doorway going into the rear of the building now. Here's an aerial view of the People's Bank building, and it has a distinctive look with those first 2 floors being a different color than the rest of the building. Here's another aerial view showing the People's Bank building and also the Michigan National Bank building, with military growing right in between. All good things have to come to an end. No, that's not a plane that flew into the corner of the People's Bank building. That's the bank building being demolished. These next few pictures will kind of take you through it. And eventually it was just another piece of ground, an empty lot. They've done a nice job fixing it up with the trees and the walkways, but there was a time when a beautiful building was here. In our next video, we'll look at the other two corners of the intersection of Military and Water Street.